So you're thinking about privacy for your big backyard. There's a lot of ways to do that, but I want to walk you through how we did it and how you can do it in the most beautiful way with natural, evergreen privacy. Now, there's a lot of layers to how we did it. I'll walk you through all that, but make sure you stay tuned all the way to the end, and I'm going to tell you how we saved a ton of money putting together our plan for natural privacy in our big backyard. So we'll make our way back. What we've got here are some evergreen Nellie R. Stevens hollies and eastern red cedars. Now, depending on where you live, you would plant different plants. Check with someone local who knows what works in your area. But in the Dallas-Fort Worth, North Texas area, these are two very, very good options that tend to manage some of the wild variety of weather and conditions we have as far as drought, rain, sun exposure, height, width, growth restrictions, and all that stuff. So eventually these things will be massive. And honestly, we've probably planted them a little too close together so that we can get that natural privacy earlier than later. And then we'll have to trim them back and maybe even transplant or remove some of them later. I would recommend that you go ahead and do that now and deal with it later, as opposed to just living in this constant waiting game to get the kind of privacy that you want. So for me, I have an unbelievably unique property. We love it. There are pros and cons, but we're in a suburban area near the office where we sell real estate and church and family and friends, but also have this potential to feel like we're further out than really we maybe actually are. You may be on big kind of rural or almost fully rural land, so you might have different motivations for this, but I have more than a dozen neighbors whose fences make up my back fence. Now, pros and cons, wonderful people, but lots of different fencing, different heights, different sizes and shapes and all those things. So that's one of the reasons that for me, I want continuity on my side and I want year-round evergreen privacy. Obviously, you're gonna have a different setup on your property, but probably some similar goals as far as privacy. Again, stay till the end. I'll talk to you about how we saved a ton of money. If your money's no object, then by all means, build you a 15-foot tall concrete or stone fence, and maybe you don't care about any of this. If that's the case, feel free to jump now. For the rest of you, stay with us. So we've got Nellie R. Stevens hollies and eastern red cedars, because ultimately those will be very large, wide, thick, visual barriers, sound barriers. They'll create shade. They look nice, and they're evergreen, meaning green all year long. Don't drop their leaves unless something's terribly, terribly wrong. So we take good care of these. We've got drip irrigation on them, and we got wood chips to make sure we keep them healthy. Let me show you what we did before we got the hollies and the cedars in. Again, we'll talk later about how we saved a bunch of money, but we did spend some money, and these certainly were not the cheapest part of the process. Initially, I planted, I believe it was 94 crepe myrtles, and I bought them bare root at an online nursery, and I paid like a couple of bucks for them. So I'll tell you a little bit more later about how we did that. But before these grow up to be really, really, really tall, these crepe myrtles are much faster growers here in our area, in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. They're also beautiful most of the late spring and summer. So the ones we're walking through right now aren't quite in bloom, but they're already starting to swell, and so probably 2-3 weeks from now, they'll be blowing up. In other areas in my yard, they're already blooming significantly. So you can see right now kind of where we are. Both sides got double layer. Most of our yard is over here. Neighbors are over here. I got 2 rows, and in mid to late summer when this thing's lit up, and then even in the fall when they start to turn kind of reds and oranges and purples, it's beautiful over here. But if you're in the yard over there, you can't see these houses on this side. There's a lot of 2-story homes, and these are just now getting to the height where really you can't see them. This is great 6, 7, maybe 8 months a year, but then they drop their leaves. So that's why we're planting the evergreen shrubs, which do cost a little bit more and take a little bit longer. So it's kind of a 2-phase plan. Crepe myrtles got us going, got some initial privacy, and then the hollies and the cedars are gonna grow up in between them. Let me show you a couple other places in the yard where we're doing this, but we have a few different things going on. Okay, now we're in what we call zone 2, different part of the backyard. We were just over kind of in a zone 3 area, getting a little bit further away from the house. By the way, if you don't know what I'm talking about, check out our zones video on how you can, you don't have to, how you can lay out your backyard so you have a plan to achieve your forever long-term vision of just having the greatest time in your backyard with friends, family, neighbors, or all by yourself. But for today, we're talking about privacy. And for zone 2, we have a lot of activity. basketball, pickleball, hangouts, parties, garden, fruit trees, all that kind of stuff. So behind me, what we're doing with privacy here, you can see is sort of a transitional both and. We have the crepe myrtles I was talking about, and I mentioned before that they're in bloom in a couple of places. We get a lot of heat off this court when the sun's out, and so those blooms are a little further ahead than some of the shadier areas on the west side. So we get a lot of beauty, and we get quicker privacy, taller privacy on those crepe myrtles because they went in first. Then we made a little bit bigger investment in the hollies, which you can see are interplanted. Now, I normally wouldn't put a plant that should grow 4, 5, 6 times as big as these and take it over. My current plan, though, is to get that initial seasonal privacy. Now, when these grow big enough, they'll be evergreen privacy. They can get as wide, almost as wide as I let them go, 18 feet or more. And if I need to transplant or just cut down the crepe myrtles later, I will. So it doesn't necessarily make perfect sense, but it makes perfect sense to me in my situation. The fence behind that is only 6 feet tall, so I can see more roof line and more neighbor than I necessarily want to. We have great neighbors, but the fact is we want to have consistent privacy on the full perimeter of the property. So you can see that kids are playing basketball, and then we've got 3 really well spaced out Nellie R. Stevens hollies, and then we've got, I don't know, 4 or 5 crepe myrtles. So we're doing both things here with the plan that ultimately we might need to take the crepe myrtles out and the hollies will grow big. But until then, we're gonna take advantage of the high privacy until something else provides that high privacy. And we're doing this pretty much up and down both sides of the property. Let me show you another area or two where we're doing a couple of slightly different things for the same goal. All right, I'm fired up to tell you about some different types of privacy, including sound, that are going on up front. But before that, if you're looking to buy or sell a property like this with an acre or 2 or 3 or 5, a really big backyard, not a working farm and ranch, but a big backyard in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, that's what we do all day, every day, with an office in Fort Worth and an office on the east side in Dallas County and Richardson. Let us know. My contact information is somewhere around this video, wherever you're seeing it. We'd be glad to help you. By the way, if you're doing that anywhere else in the United States, let us know too. We have an incredible network of agents and brokers you can trust all over. Now, what's happening here is not only visual privacy from neighbors in the road, but also sound privacy. So you can tell we live on a somewhat busier road. By the way, that was a tip for acquiring property at a better price as well. Our lifestyle's completely in the back. We don't really care as much what's happening out front. The advantage is we can get everywhere we want. But that's not what this video is about. Check out the rest of the channel. For today, privacy-wise, you can see we did the crepe myrtle thing here again. And I'll tell you in a minute how we saved a bunch of money. But the crepe myrtle thing is going on here. I have not yet underplanted that evergreen stuff that I've done in other areas. I will eventually, so that we have full privacy, not just at the top level. So you can see these crepe myrtles are great at the, say, 6 to 20 foot level, but at the bottom level, I had tried some things previously that failed. I had put in a willow variety and it just didn't work, but I moved it back by the pond and it's like 60 feet tall now. It just needed a ton of water. So it's great back there. It did not work here. We'll bring some hollies or cedars here later, and they'll do the same thing they're doing in the other areas, which is probably outgrow and take the place of these. I do want to show you along the road. We've had a ton of water. We haven't been able to mow. The yard doesn't look great right now, so don't judge me. But if you do it in the comments. We'll engage there. But out front, super muddy right now, but we've got a line of Nellie R. Stevens hollies again, because they will absolutely close every one of those gaps, and they'll go 30 plus feet tall. So we're dealing with power lines up here. Not ideal, but everybody has stuff that's not ideal that you're dealing with. And we have road noise, and the road is above the level of our yard. So that noise is somewhat unobstructed. To be honest, inside the house, it's not a big deal, but outside, even though I'm wearing a mic, you can probably hear some of that. So those will ultimately grow up and not only be a visual privacy, but a major, major, major sound barrier. And for me, from a design perspective, I love the fact that ultimately you will not be able to see anything except for these little pockets of ingress and egress, access, entrance and exit. So those will kind of be a little welcome to our secret private world back here. Not so much secret, but private, okay? That's what we're talking about when we think through privacy. So our strategy was the same solution to different problems. So the hollies look good. They had a life expectancy a growth height and width that worked for us, but they were also thick enough, which didn't matter back here. It was almost a negative in the backyard. How thick is it gonna grow? How much land am I gonna have to give up for this privacy? But the balance of solutions worked out here because it also created a lot of sound break. The thickness, the density, when they grow together, they could be a hedge. If we want to trim them that way, they could create a clean wall, even though it's multiple plants. Let me show you one other thing before we wrap this up. And once we get over here, I'll explain to you how we saved a ton of money on the process as well. Now we've got some other landscaping going on in the yard, which will also help with some beauty and some sound break. But this front row is for visual and audio privacy. Plan A, B, and probably C, and then all the other stuff is just kind of bonus benefit. But as we sneak our way through here, these crepe myrtles can do a couple of things. When I bought them, the intention was height and visual. We've also added some varieties of different heights. So I'll spin you around here in a second and I'll just show you. You've got some that will grow to 30-ish feet, and you have some that really mature out at like 8 to 10 feet. And that's how you can get that upper and lower visual and sound break, and sometimes a barrier to animals or pests or neighbors if you don't always have the best. But let me show you what's happening over here. This is another combo area where some of this is beyond my property boundary. The city's told me I'm fine, but I'm trying to respect the community design. There's an HOA that manages the property right there. So I'm trying to make everybody happy. So once again, I'm doing the combination of the crepe myrtle and the holly. Again, we tried some Japanese yews here before. It didn't work out as well for us. The hollies do better in our climate with drought. So heavy mulch, I bermed it up, so we're just getting a little bit more advantage. But ultimately, again, with the road noise and the view from down the road, I'm wanting to create a solid break here. 30, 40 feet tall, again, dealing with the power lines. So the crepe myrtles came up quick, and they will grow at a faster pace, much more affordably. And then those hollies are planted interspersed. And ultimately, once they get to full maturity, the crepe myrtles won't be needed. If they survive it and they continue to provide some color and bloom throughout the summer, then it's best of both worlds. But the combination has been our plan. Ultimately, I want to have that on the full, every inch of the perimeter. So you can't see the differences in my neighbor's fences. You can't hear one neighbor more than the other. You can't see a 2-story, but not see the 1-story. I want to have full max privacy all the way around for sound and visual, and some distance from neighbors, pets, and things like that. We love our neighbors, but from a visual design perspective, that's a huge advantage to us. Okay, I promised initially we would talk about saving some money. So the money saving tip for evergreen privacy number 1 is actually not evergreen. It was my plan A. Step 1 of the process was these crepe myrtles. Wherever you live, there will be something like this. But if you're in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, really almost anywhere in the South, crepe myrtles are an incredibly good plan for you. Now, I planted, I think, 94 crepe myrtles for less than $300. How did we do that? So we went online to an online nursery that we trusted somewhat. I will say it didn't go perfectly, but the good news is it doesn't have to go perfectly. We got bare root crepe myrtles for around $2. Now this was 10 years ago, so maybe they're $3 or $4 or $5 now, but the point is way cheaper than getting a big 30 or 40 gallon tree that's this size when you buy it. The key is to find a tree or a type of shrub or plant that grows rapidly in your area. You don't need this thing to live 20 or 30 years. You need them to get you to phase 2, which may be your dream long-term scenario. So when you can buy 100 or more trees, depending on the size of your property, mine's about 2 acres, when you can buy enough for that cheap and bare root, meaning you just have bare roots and a stick of some sort, you can plant those on your own. You don't need to build or dig a massive hole to do that. You can do that with a shovel. You can do that with one of those drill attachments, depending on your soil type. But the point is, we bought bulk, save money on bulk purchasing, wholesale type order, and we bought all one variety of one type of plant, and therefore we got them really, really cheap. And the install or the planting was very, very simple. That's step 1 on how to save a bunch of money. Now, when it is time to get those bigger, more mature, or to underplant some evergreens. Buying in bulk is going to save you there. If you can plant them yourself, you're going to save a bunch of money, because buying a plant and having someone install it, the labor is going to be as much as the actual inventory, the plant itself. But buy them all at once, even if that means waiting a year or two to save up so that you can get all that you need or most of what you need. It's okay to do that in phases, but to get that initial dozens of plants, you're going to save money by buying them in volume. Now, it's tricky as to whether you would do those bare root. That's up to you. Depends on your budget. I did not do that for that round 2. But for years, the seasonal privacy we got from these trees has been great. We had privacy when we were out using the yard most. So when we're swimming and friends are over in the heat of the summer, these things are already up and rocking and rolling, and we got our privacy. These in our climate grew so fast that certainly by the second year we had significant privacy. So those are those primary tips. Order in bulk, go bare root, install them yourselves. You can have a bunch of people over, throw a little planting party, especially people that are going to benefit from your big backyard, and get that knocked out in one day or a weekend or whatever. So take that, run with it, save some money, get your evergreen privacy with consistency, even if you're not dealing with a bunch of neighbors like I am. Consistent, clean, beautiful year-round privacy like this will, probably, might, most likely will make you feel like you're in a completely different place. If you're like us and you want your dream home with a big backyard, in town, near town, this will change your whole feel, your whole vibe, your whole energy. People will come to your house and say what they say when they came here. I can't believe we are where we are. It feels like I'm way out. This feels like an oasis, like some Shangri-La property, which is your dream, not necessarily to impress people, but to enjoy it with people. Let us know in the comments what you're doing for privacy, what you're looking for in your area, or what we can do for you in the future. And again, if you're buying or selling a property like this in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, that's what we do. We'd love to earn your business.